It's not just a technical skill set, it requires emotional intelligence. So I will forever be a recovering workaholic. That is just such a dismissive comment. Law firms are unusual places to work in many respects. So I definitely think that.
Hello, hello, and welcome to the latest episode of But Is It Legal with me, Simon Marshall. I'm the founder of TBD Marketing, and thanks for joining us this week, as you always do. This week, I'm joined by the brilliant Alana Tart. Alana, can you give a quick introduction and tell people what it is that you do for a living? That'd be grand.
Sure. Thanks so much, Simon. It's such a delight to be here.
Mm.
What do I do? Well, I'm afraid that I do not have this cookie cutter box that I easily fit into. I'm now both a fractional general counsel with the legal director. I'm also a certified coach and mindfulness teacher, which divide into both executive coaching and then youth mentoring with the Mentor Well.
Yes, we've got a lot of ground to cover today, right? Given that you've got three careers.
Well, I try and divide them into two, but I mean, it's one of these things where once you fully embrace all that you are, then you're just always completely driven with this self awareness and realization and excitement. So, yeah, there probably is a lot of ground to cover.
I guess my first question was going to be, what does a typical day look like for you? But is that even like a valid question? Do you have a typical day? Does that work that way?
No, I don't really feel I have a typical day per se. I more have typical weeks in the sense of what I managed to get done. But my days are really more about flow than control. So, really about integrating all aspects of life. In addition, you asked about my career, but I also have two teenage kids, a house full of pets, a very active community that I'm part in. So, it's just one very bountiful life.
A rich life as well, by the sounds of it. I mean, that is.
We've spent a lot of time, I think, really in the past 5 years being very intentional about how we have designed how we live and work and play. So yeah, we're getting there.
Is it an ongoing conversation on a regular basis? Is that how it works? Is that the only way to make it to work?
I think it has to be always an ongoing conversation, particularly with yourself, starting there, right? So as I said, I'm an executive coach, and I spend a lot of time working with people who are often revisiting their values or just discovering them for the first time, what actually is important to them, and that really does need to be a revisited conversation.
I love that. I love that living intentionally line as well. I'm going to remember that. And I think everyone else is after today's call. Tell me, let's start out with a little bit on the fractional GC side. What would the fractional GC do? How does it work? And what do people misunderstand about the nature of a fractional GC?
So, fractional general counsel is simply being a general counsel that is not employed by the business, and you may actually have a portfolio of clients. So, the only reason it's really called fractional is because it's like having a series of part time general counsel roles. In my case, it's because I very, again, the word intentionally, I knew what kind of companies I wanted to work in. They're not usually the type of companies which would hire the caliber of lawyer that they do need. So they often will take financial shortcuts and try and hire someone who is at a much lower PQE level, and then bizarrely end up paying them more than they would for hiring someone at my level of seniority and giving the service that they need, particularly as they're growing really fast. So, fractional general counsel really is that. You're a general counsel, often for a variety of clients, and in my case, for ones that are smaller and can't afford my caliber of legal help any other way. I think you said, what are some of the things that people tend to get wrong?
Yeah.
Two really come to mind. One is that you will not have a seat at the table, which is something that a lot of general counsel like to talk about. It's not automatic. because you are going in to make sure you are getting the legals done. So my hands are now dirtier than when I was in giant corporate and I was in FTSE 100, sorry, no, Fortune 100 multinational just before this. So you can imagine my life was more politics than it was actually getting the job done. So there is, yeah, I'm enjoying the fact that my hands are a bit, should we call it dirty than before, but it still is very much a strategic role. I'm managing external counsel, managing further legal support. You get invited to the table just by proving your worth, which happens very, very quickly. So that's, I think, myth number one is that you won't have a seat at the table, won't be strategic. That is not how at all my experience, quite the opposite. Myth number two is that I think there was a time period where people thought about this type of being a lawyer as something you might do if you struggle to get another GC role or if you wanted a lifestyle choice. I can tell you, based on the phenomenal colleagues that I have at the legal director, that is very far from the case. Most of them are like me, highly driven, and are looking for a different kind of challenge that a single corporate role just simply can't deliver. And what's amazing about firms like TLD is that it really is your career to build and to create.
I love that. There's a lot to think about there. Is it, you sound like you love it as well. Is it a career, a lifestyle that you'd recommend to others? And not necessarily mixing it with coaching as well, but I mean the fractional GC element of life.
Yeah, I think, but again, I'll go back to who are you? Who do you want to be? Who are you becoming? So it's so important to have the clarity on it. This is not an easy choice. Like people, as I suggested, seem to have this mythology that it's a lifestyle choice. This is not a life of quote unquote ease. You have to have your book of business. You have to deliver and you have to deliver well to your clients. You have to also be able, you are a lot of the time working remotely and yet still having influence. So there are a lot of challenges there. And do I recommend it? I wouldn't turn back. I mean, I'm done. I'm never going back to another way. And I am having more fun as a lawyer now than I think I've ever had in my entire career.
Amazing. Oh, you can hear it in your voice. There's such joy there as well. Tell me a bit about this decision to qualify as a coach. What, maybe a little bit about the process, and then, is there something that's surprising you learned about yourself as well, like through the process?
So I never intended to do this, Simon.
Okay.
I had two opportunities when I was in giant multinational, which really changed a lot for me. One was that I myself got a lot of coaching, and that led me to, for my own, just my own growth, double qualify as a mindfulness teacher. So I actually could practice on the NHS as a integrated mindfulness and compassion counselor. And I did not intend to do anything with that. It purely was because, when I'm in, I go all in. And that was me going all in terms of embedding my mindfulness practice. At the same time as I did that, I became co-chair of the Global Parents Employee Resource Group. And one of the things that we set up was peer-to-peer coaching for parents who are returning after parental leave, because that's a
Mhm.
huge transition point in people's lives and it can be really, really difficult. And that led me to start getting my coaching qualification. And I suddenly found myself really wanting to do more and more of that work, enjoying it a great deal more than line management and trying to fight at calibration meetings for people who deserved to get the recognition, to actually get the recognition. Yeah, coaching, you really are helping people fully become themselves. And so I just found myself unintentionally with a second career option. It was just me following my breadcrumb path, and I couldn't deny that. And so then I came to a point with my kids; they kept getting older, and you always have to just ask yourself the tough questions. And the tough question for me is, well, what is my role really as a parent? Is it to continue having a job, which I'm doing because it's a good living, it's intellectually challenging, and so it's fun in that way, and it will have a good pension, but it's not actually me. It's not fulfilling all of me. It's certainly not stretching all of me and keeping me growing. And what would I want my kids to do? What do I want for them? What kind of role model am I being? And it wasn't to just sit in corporate. That was not what I would want them to do and how I want to show up for them. So the path there was not, I mean, I sound like, yes, I built this intentional life. That was unintentional. And but then the stark realization of who I was so clear. I could not keep denying it. And the fractional GC work just opened it up because I didn't want to stop being a lawyer. I love being a lawyer. It really is a very big part of who I am and how my brain loves to operate. So, what's been the most surprising thing? This is going to sound totally woo woo, and I'm actually not a terribly woo woo person. But they say when you're on your path, it opens for you. And it is unreal how much that's happened for me. I actually have only been out of the more typical CV path. And believe me, like Simon, I went, I did Cambridge, big law in the city, all the right in-house roles. And so now I'm living the least conventional package um, that my CV has ever had on it. And yes, everything has just easily happened on the coaching atmosphere. So in the coaching arena. So I mean, I'm oversubscribed in my executive coaching. I have everything from the CEO of a major US airport to a former prison inmate who is just taking the prevention and reform world by storm. I have a new college graduate. I have senior lawyers sharpening their leadership skills. It's amazing. Amazing, wonderful people who I love to work with. And then along came MentorWell, a youth mentoring agency focusing on helping teens thrive, led by a fellow Canadian who lost his daughter to suicide when she was the same age as mine is now, about 10 years ago. And so these purposeful paths just find me.
That's amazing. We'll come to that in a minute. I want to hear a bit more about the youthful coaching, but just thinking about the intersection of legal and coaching there, is it something you think that more lawyers should get involved with? Is it something that should be taught as part of our kind of training as lawyers?
I think that good coaching, and believe me, there's a lot of not so good coaching, can be counterproductive. But I think good coaching would help anyone and anything. So yes, and law firms are unusual places to work in many respects. So I definitely think that integrating, and I've seen it with some firms. They have some firms not necessarily with coaching, but from some more in-house psychologists and cultural development arms not securely attached to HR? I think so, but you really have to make sure that it doesn't become like weaponized well-being, which is there. The fatigue in terms of everyone being told they need to be resilient, and that actually suddenly becomes something that is used against people. That's not helpful. So that's just one of the reasons why I do coaching independent of organizations. I would prefer to not have a line manager involved in someone's personal development journey. But yes, I would highly encourage everybody to find a good coach earlier than I did. I really do wonder what would have happened had I been fortunate enough to have parents like the college grad that I have who paid for coaching early on in my career, because I was lost in my 20s. I would say I probably was lost for decades. And I do wonder what would have happened if I had had greater clarity much earlier on.
I love that. If you could sneak one coaching um, principle or idea into your average law firm away day, what would it be? What would it be and why?
It would have to do with embodiment
Okay.
because lawyers, and myself included, were so good at living from the neck up and forget that a lot of wisdom lies in our bodies. And if we just could even get a fraction more connected with what our emotions and our sensations are telling us, we would be much more effective with ourselves, managing ourselves, managing others, including juniors and clients.
Okay, that's lovely. Take me back to the youth coaching and tell me a bit more about that. I'm
Mm.
really intrigued because yeah, I'm a dad. I've got youngsters around here, and I'm kind of wishing, like you were just saying there, I wish I'd taken that opportunity when I was in my 20s. I'm not sure, Alana. I would have been very coachable. I think my big challenge would have been I'd have resisted it, that idea of taking it on. So I'd
Yeah.
like to hear a bit about what it is, and then how do you? Is it difficult to encourage youngsters to take it on, or do they just leap at the opportunity? How does that work?
Well, it really depends. Do they leap at the opportunity? Some do. Some really do. I actually was one of those really annoying teens in a way. Straight A student, reliable, resilient, your perfect teen. Would I have leapt at the opportunity? Yes, I would have leapt at the opportunity. And I really wish that I would have had it. Do we have some that are like that? Yeah, because it does build the skills of the future. So, working with teens, and this is why it's mentoring, but really our mentoring, we have highly trained mentors, and it's a hybrid of mentoring with coaching skills. And so mentoring is much more led, though, whereas coaching is not. However, the commonality is a very connected relationship. So you need to make sure that you have that. And your teens will go on a spectrum, as you can imagine. So you have those who were your like me and we're very driven focused and are looking for the skills that this is offering. And so we all, I think, know that EQ, so emotional intelligence, is the competitive advantage that anybody is going to manage to have with the advent of AI,
Right.
particularly for the younger generation now. And I, by the way, am a huge user of AI as a lawyer, but it's a senior lawyer's tool because that's just replaced my juniors. Different topic. So there's one. And I will also just go back by saying that our mentoring agreements are actually three-way signed. So the teen or young adult has to sign it if they're being, as well as whoever's sponsoring it, i.e., the parents or guardians. So that means that you do have those upfront discussions, and they have to be, you have to have some level of commitment. Okay, so you've got that. You've got those who know that who really just want to build more confidence. They're struggling. Maybe they're going through some issues with peers and they're wanting a safer space to land, and they don't know how to manage what's going on with their peer group. And they also tend to be more avid, but it's harder work with them because there's some harder truths at times they need to work through. Then you've got the end, and I mentioned Chris and his daughter, who are what you call the combination with therapy as well as with mentoring. And that's a slower process of really building a relationship with another adult so that, and it's explaining to them that they will have someone, that they don't have to have the pressure like they do when they're going to therapy. No one's trying to fix them. They're just wanting to give them a space while they're going through all this stuff in their life. We're at the beginning. Is it working? I mean, yeah, we have some clients, but you will also have those for whom this is not the right fit. And so you do have to have some dedication from them that they want to be involved. At its base is, as I suggested, the very clear, easy to grasp concept that a secure, attached connection with an adult is transformative. And it is. We all need connection, particularly at that time of our lives.
Amazing. I've read some attachment theory stuff in the past as well, actually. It's an incredible read. I'd encourage all parents to take a look at it. In fact, I'd encourage all children to go and take a look at it as well. If you can deal with those issues, and I think you can move forward with the rest of your life a lot more easily. Listen, tell me if you could fast forward. I know it's only a relatively recent
Yep.
launch for Mental Well. So if you could fast forward a year and tell me what success looked like in a year's time, what does that look like? The progress. What progress would you have made in a year?
Okay. So you're talking to someone who's not just a mentor, but actually I am the general counsel because I do have an equity stake in this business, which I
Okay.
decided to because when Chris came to me, I went, wow, that actually how did you know this is what I somehow was meant for? So I believe that strongly in it. We have all the business is building complete. I mean, we are oversubscribed, but we're oversubscribed geographically, and this is a very jurisdictionally specific business. So let's just think about the fact that our mentors all have to be trained to understand mandatory reporting requirements. If you have any suspicion of abuse, for example, you have mandatory reporting requirements. That's jurisdictionally specific. The data privacy, it's youth data, it's potentially well-being or health data. You've got highly sensitive data. Like this is a very jurisdictionally complex beast. So all of that would be taken care of. We decided we were going to launch in Canada. We're launching now because it's the 10th anniversary of Maddie's passing. And then suddenly we have people from San Francisco to Germany to Japan going, "Oh my goodness, can you help me?" And of course, Chris is like, "Lana, we have to do this." And I'm like, "Chris, I'm not a Japanese lawyer. Like, I can probably manage these other ones." But so there's some fundamental tech basics too. So, you have to, with the data protection, again, so I'm going to look, talking the legals here, but this is
Okay.
what keeps me up at night, not just the youth. Almost that's to me, that's the easier part in a way because we spent so long working on it. But you have to have the platform because you can't, like, I have my executive coaching clients, they WhatsApp me. It's fine. Well, you can't do that here.
Yeah.
All communication has to be on a secure platform because you're dealing with youth. So again, just all of that, all of these business teething will be gone. And so all that's done. You've got your building blocks, and you have a solid network of diverse mentors. Again, that's your other hurdle is recruiting, not just people who are very capable of providing those really outstanding listening, non-judgmental listening skills, which is a challenge. Truly, it is a challenge. I've done a lot of training on it myself to develop those areas. But diversity, you can really think here. We don't yet, but you could have youth, for example, who were adopted, and it will matter to them that they're matched with someone who understands the lived reality of what they're growing up in. LGBTQ, people who are from mixed race families. Like diversity can be a really important match. Also, it really helps us continue to grow as an organization. Our teams would be thriving, and our mentors would say, "This changed me too."
I love it. I mean, I'm looking forward to having a conversation in a year's time. You telling me how it's gone and marking your homework live on another version of the podcast, maybe as well, and see how we've done. It's one that's very close to my heart. So thank you for
Yeah.
taking that challenge on. Listen, let's get to these last couple of questions because we're going to run out of time otherwise.
Yes.
Three, I think. One, you've talked about narcissism and gaslighting in
Mhm.
legal culture. Have things shifted since you called it out initially? Are we getting better or getting worse?
Okay, first, there are lots of different definitions and beliefs around narcissism. So I just have to lay out what mine are in order to answer. I believe narcissistic tendencies or patterns, as opposed to there being narcissists per se. So I'm not into the DSM definition of it being a personality type. And I also believe that both narcissism and gaslighting are human adaptations, usually to trauma wounds. And so that doesn't make them part of the legal culture per se. Um, but we do have, as I suggested, we have, most of us lawyers are pretty good at living above our head. We're pretty good at numbing our emotions. Does that help us in order to engage in those behaviors? Yeah, it does. Do I think more people are calling out toxicity, but performative wellness very much exists. And I don't think enough people really appreciate that all of us, you and I included, can fall into these behaviors. If you'd like me to give you an example, then I can. But my hope is that real change will come not from better policies, but from people that are learning to see themselves and listen to themselves and fully accept themselves. Because when you have those trauma wounds, a lot of them are based on non compassionate, non acceptance of self.
Yeah, that's a deeply profound thing. It does feel like something we should spend a different episode on as well. I think you're right, right? We can't rush through that one as well. Okay, I'm going to park it because it's
Okay,
important. But
okay.
thank you on that as well. What's the most kind of uncoach like thing you do when you're stressed? What's the thing that you think, oh, yeah, okay,
So I will forever be a recovering workaholic. We
right.
all have our coping defaults. What matters is not pretending that we've outgrown them. It's building enough awareness that we don't live there. And mine is burying myself in my work.
And that's going to resonate with the many, many people who watch this podcast. There's no two ways about that as well. And I don't mean to joke about it either, right?
Yep.
It's a serious point
It's
as well. So
absolutely.
thank you. I guess my laughter is coming from a position of empathy and understanding and self recognition, right? So that's where it's coming from entirely. People have been asking me about the influencers report this time. How long did it take you to compile it? And you notice, Alana, I have not once answered that question.
Yep.
And it's because I
Exactly.
don't want to admit the truth, right? Which is suboptimal. And I think it's because I worry that my family may answer for me at some point as well. Um, okay, if you could outlaw one phrase that lawyers use, final question. If you could outlaw one phrase that lawyers use, what would it be?
Oh, it's something along like, let's just be pragmatic or let's just be realistic. That is just such a dismissive comment. And it often just means like, don't bring your whole self here. Don't bring any emotions here, for example. But sustainable success and truly being a very good lawyer, it's not just a technical skill set, it requires emotional intelligence.
Love that answer. It's the best answer. Thank you for sharing that. Listen, I've really enjoyed today. I know that you've been incredibly busy the week. And so thanks for making time to kind of do this as well. If you've been watching today and this is your first ever episode, then please, give Alana a follow. Many, many other people do on LinkedIn. So she will notice those still. She loves accumulating a big crowd behind her following on LinkedIn. And then um but if you like the episode enough, and I think there's been some interesting topics in here, please can share it with a friend or two. Maybe encourage them to watch it as well. It's on Spotify, it's on YouTube, it's on a version of it's on LinkedIn as well. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Alana, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, Simon, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.